Hello and welcome to Wedding Wednesdays with Weddings Online. My name is Kelly and I'm a former wedding planner and blogger, and I'm obsessed with weddings. If you're planning a wedding in Ireland, you're in the right place. You're going to learn the tried and tested methods to planning your dream wedding without the added stress. Think of this as your one-stop shop for everything to do with planning your wedding in Ireland, with me, your new wedding planning bestie, and a cup of tea. This is Wedding Wednesdays with Weddings Online. Well, happy Wednesday and welcome to a brand new episode of Wedding Wednesdays with Weddings Online. One of my favorite things to talk about is the fact that weddings, sure, they're expensive, but they don't have to be outside of your budget. In fact, today I'm going to share some genius ways that you can save money on your wedding. And I'm not talking about things like DIY your Spotify playlist instead of having a band, because I don't recommend that. I'm also not talking about hiring a student to come and take photos for really, really cheap or even free, because again, I don't recommend that. I'm going to share some really helpful tips for you from the beginning of your wedding planning journey, including my ultimate favorite wedding budget tip, which is one that I used for my very own wedding. I think it's genius. I'm pretty sure I came up with it on my own. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. But I'm going to end the episode by sharing it with some examples of how you can implement it. But why don't we get started? I'm going to walk you through this. The very first thing, if you want to save money on your wedding, you actually need to create a budget. And I know that I said that this is genius, and some of you may be rolling your eyes and saying, obviously we're going to have a budget. But the thing is, so many couples have a budget, and it's what they would consider kind of a hypothetical budget, and they don't actually ever implement the budget. So my key piece of information when it comes to budgets is to have an understanding of what the industry costs might be, and then put those into a budget so you then know what you are working with. I can share a link with you to a survey that we did. So every year Weddings Online does a survey where we ask thousands of couples to share information about what they spend on specific things in their wedding, and that will give you an understanding of what things cost, instead of emailing all the suppliers in the industry and getting quotes for different things. And sure, some of the costs will be different to what you would spend, and I'll explain in my next point why that is the case. But the idea here is that if you have a kind of basic understanding of what a wedding venue will cost, or what the meal will cost, or what a photographer costs, or a DJ, then it'll kind of give you a bit of a ballpark and you know what you're working with. Having a budget is really helpful because you need to know what you're working with. You need to know what things will cost. You need to know what you have already spent, what you have left to spend. And I'm going to walk you through some more specific things you can do as we go down. But my second point is you need to know what's important to you. And this is why some things cost different for different people. The amazing thing about weddings is that they are so unique. You can customize a wedding to be everything that you want it to be. So that would mean that my wedding will be completely different to your wedding because I have things that I love, you have things that you love, and that means that our priorities will be a little bit different. And so therefore what we spend money on and what we prioritize will be different. And I think that's kind of amazing. It means that not every wedding is exactly the same. And, we'll share tips here on the Weddings Online podcast where we help you make decisions. But of course, every wedding is completely unique. So my advice to you is to decide what's important to you. And the reason that that's helpful from a budget perspective is if you know what your priorities are, that's where you will put your money. And then the other things will be lower on the list. And if you can't afford them, you just don't have them. So, for example, some people love the idea of going all out with flowers, and they want to have the flower arch, they want to have the flower pillars, they want to have really big, amazing flower displays as centerpieces and cascading bouquets, and that's a focus. And if that's you, that's what you want to make a priority, and so you want to make sure that your budget for your flowers is generous. Some other couples love the idea of filling the dance floor with all their friends and family and having an amazing band and DJ to entertain guests so that throughout the whole night, you've got amazing music. And if that's you, then that should be your priority. And you want to put, as much money as you can into your wedding day entertainment, specifically the music entertainment. Other couples love the idea of having a plated meal where every guest is brought their own delicious meal. Maybe it's 3 courses, 4 courses, 5 courses, whatever you want. And if that is you, then you know that the meal side of things is where you want to put your budget focus. So really what I'm trying to say here is, if you find that you don't have enough money to have all the things you could possibly want for your wedding, then choose your priorities and focus on those. Because you can't have a 5-course meal that's plated and at a Michelin star restaurant and 3 amazing bands, that are world class, and all the flowers you could possibly imagine, and. Most people can't have it all, and that's okay. So choose the things that you want to focus on, and then allow your budget to help you to prioritize what your focus is, and then the other things can come later if you have money left to spare. Next tip, when it comes to your budget, you need to create some wiggle room. So this is how it goes. You'll have an idea of what things will cost based on the industry standards, as we mentioned earlier. And then as you find out what things will actually cost for your specific venue, your specific photographer, the time of year that things are happening, you can create, so you have your estimated cost and then your actual costs. So then you're working with actual numbers that you're going to be spending. The wiggle room is so that you don't fill up your budget 100% and then perhaps an unexpected cost comes along, you're taken by surprise, and then you've gone over budget to accommodate that extra cost. I'm actually going to go through all these unexpected costs in next week's episode because I come across these so many times where couples have diligently followed their budget. They've worked so hard to stay in budget. They've taken all the advice that I've given, and then something crops up that they didn't expect, and they can't just say, no, we don't need that, because it's actually an important cost. So the wiggle room will mean that if something pops up that you aren't expecting, some kind of emergency, it means that you're not going over budget. But the other helpful thing is that by me telling you what these unexpected costs are in next week's episode, they're not going to be unexpected for you, and you can factor them into your budget. But you still want to keep wiggle room because you just never know if something else will creep up that you didn't anticipate. So wiggle room, very helpful to have that in your budget. If you want to save money on your wedding, here's a genius life hack. Avoid inspiration overload. So those Pinterest boards that you've got, they're helpful for the beginning stages of planning because they will help you to create that vision of, what you want things to look like. They help you to see what wedding bouquets look like with different color combos and seasonal flowers, and they can help you to match the color of your bridesmaids' dresses with the ties, and all of those details are very helpful at the beginning when you're discussing your theme and your colors and the aesthetic for the day. You can also find loads of really fun ideas. So if you're looking for something specific, it's great. Instagram and TikTok are the same. They're great spaces to get inspiration and information. But it comes to a point where you've actually made all those key decisions already, and all you'll be doing is looking at inspiration that you can't afford to implement. And that's when you end up going over your budget. Let's say you've planned everything. You've got your entertainment, you've got the outfits ready, you've chosen the food, you've chosen the songs, everything's sorted, and then you come across this amazing trending idea that pops up on TikTok, and you think, oh, I just have to do that. And the next thing you know, you're going over budget. So basically, once you've decided what you're going to do, pick and choose who you're going to carry on following online so that you don't get bombarded with things that you can't have. So I always recommend sticking with accounts that help to empower you to make decisions, accounts that will give you helpful tips to choose between different things. So things that we like to post on Weddings Online will be, like 3 tips to help you decide on your flowers, or 5 ways to create your guest list. Those types of things, that's what you're going to find on our Instagram pages. So we're not going to create inspiration overload where you're going to feel like you are missing out on things. So if you want to make sure that you stick into your budget, just follow the accounts that help empower you, not the ones that are going to be throwing more and more things at you that you feel like you have to have. Next tip is to itemize everything. So when you create your wedding budget, I don't just want to see wedding stationery written on there. I want to see the itemized list of all the wedding stationery options that you can possibly imagine. Save the dates, invitations, mass booklets, place cards, postage, menus, everything. Every single wedding stationery item should be itemized and listed on your budget, because that way you don't forget individual things. It's going to help you in the long run because then you know that you haven't missed something. And while you're going, ask for receipts. Okay, you're going to have so many things going on. You're going to be making lots of decisions. You're going to be paying for deposits and doing different things. And it's very helpful to be able to keep track of all the things that you've actually spent money on. So you can update that budget and say, we've bought that, we've booked that, we've hired that, we've reserved that, everything's sorted. These are the receipts. We know exactly what we've paid and what we're getting for that money. So hold on to your receipts, and it could be weekly that you sit down, you go through everything and you update that budget so you know what you're working with. Here's another tip: choose an off-peak wedding date. So if you want to save money on your wedding, sometimes it means making a compromise or a sacrifice somewhere down the line. And my advice is to pick a date that's less popular because they are often cheaper. I'm talking winter wedding dates and midweek wedding dates, which are becoming more popular, but they are still considered off-peak. It also means that you have a better chance of having all your dream wedding suppliers available because the dates are less popular, and so you're not competing with as many couples in those off-peak dates as you are in the popular dates. So popular dates are dates in summer and Saturdays, and actually Sundays are becoming pretty popular too. So if you want to save money, there are so many suppliers that have really special prices for those off-peak dates, and it's definitely worth asking. And so if you're not sure and you've got your eye on a couple of suppliers and you don't mind when you get married, it's very helpful to just send them an email and say, I really love your work and I wondered if you have any off-peak dates available and if those have different prices. Doesn't hurt to ask. Okay. We're about to end with my absolute favorite wedding budget hack, and I'm going to give you examples of how you can implement it. This is it. Use one thing for multiple purposes. It's genius, okay? When I was planning weddings, and then when I planned my own wedding, this was something that I would implement because it helps you to save money. So you can have one thing and you use it in one space and then you use it again in another space. And now the only way that this is actually a budget-friendly thing is if you use the item for something you had already planned to do. For example, your centerpieces. You don't only need to have centerpieces that look beautiful, but your centerpieces could serve a secondary purpose. So for example, at my wedding, we had a kind of autumnal theme, and we had these really cute forest trees that lined the tables. It made the whole venue look like a forest, which was so cute. But in addition to looking good and being in the center of the table and, fulfilling the role of centerpieces, those trees were also the wedding favors. So every couple or family or individual, if there was a single person, they each got to take one of them home. And so that's one item that served two purposes because we wanted centerpieces and we wanted wedding favors. Here's another idea: cake or dessert. You don't actually need both unless you are a sweet tooth kind of person and you love cake and that is your priority. The average wedding guest probably isn't going to be able to have the dessert and the cake. And so you may be spending money on both when you could actually have one that serves the purpose of both. For example, you have a really beautiful cake and you serve that cake as your dessert. Genius, right? What about things like your backdrops? If you're going to be spending money on an amazing ceremony backdrop, why not use that backdrop as your photo booth backdrop at your reception venue? One thing, two purposes. Things like programs. If you're getting married in summer and you anticipate that it's going to be really hot, you could turn your programs into really cute fans. So it's a fan that the guests can use to keep themselves cool, but all the information on the program is what you need to communicate with them anyway. And things like your photo booth and your guest book. I've been to a number of weddings where I've gone to take a picture at the photo booth. I've been able to print the picture, stick it in the guest book, and write like a lovely message for the couple. But then sometimes you get a second copy of the photos that you can take home. So there you have it. One thing with multiple purposes. So have a think about what you could do at your wedding, which is one thing with multiple purposes, because that is a really genius way of saving money. That's what I did. Well, thank you for listening today. The Wedding Wednesdays with Weddings Online podcast is produced by me, Kelly, and mixed, mastered, and edited by Glenn Hartman. For more wedding planning tips, advice, checklists, and more, visit weddingsonline.ie.